For fellow Tennessee folks, everything you just heard this morning, this is Dr. Littell. I came in from Florida. Everything you heard today will all be for naught if physicians and patients are not given their God-given rights to receive the care that they deserve, for physicians to be able to administer life-saving remedies to patients without fear of retribution, loss of licensure, decertification, or being forced to go for psychological counseling, which is the latest tactic. Latest tactic is to label all of us as disruptive physicians because we represent our patients. We advocate for our patients. You deserve better as patients. We deserve better as physicians. Tennessee deserves better than this charade. This was supposed to go to 2 o'clock today. Your chairperson decided to cut it a half hour early because they didn't want to deal with it, because the Tennessee Medical Association and the Tennessee Hospital Association Hey,
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We will call to order our House Insurance Subcommittee. It is Tuesday, March 1st, the year 2022, 1:30 p.m. We have an intern with us who's done a great job this year, and we're going to allow Savannah Beatty. Savannah, if you could please call the roll.
Representatives Sapicki, Hawk, Hicks, Kumar, Lafferty, Mitchell, Rudder, Smith, Terry, Thompson. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Beatty. I appreciate that very much. Members of the committee, do we have any personal orders before we begin? Representative Thompson, you're recognized.
Yeah, I just wanted to recognize a friend, Dr. George Woodbury, a dermatologist from Memphis, who graces my district with his office and his wife's office as well.
I've been asked, there's a reason we have several white coats in the crowd. Not that you could be unnoticed. We certainly want to notice today is Pharmacy Day on the Hill. It looks like we've got a lot of students. Why don't you stand up? Let's recognize all of our pharmacists. Thank you all so much for being here. Any other personal orders from committee members? I will call. I saw a couple of colleagues from Sullivan County. I'm not sure if they made it into the room or not. Gary Stidham and Sam Jones. Gary, Sam, did you all make it in the room? I don't think they did. Well, anyway, if they were here, they're a couple of pretty good guys from Sullivan County, so thank you all so much. We do have a calendar before us today. Let me go ahead and take care of a little business before we get started. We do have some action, some rolls on a few bills that we're going to take care of before we get started. Item number 2 on our calendar today, House Bill 1772 by Chairman Powers. That bill is going to be rolled to the final calendar. House Bill, item number 3 on the calendar, House Bill 2225 by Chairman Powers also will be rolled to the final calendar. And item number 5 on our calendar, House Bill 2351 by Vice Chairman Mark Hall. That will be rolled, and the request is going to be rolled to the heel of our final calendar, and we will grant that without objection. Those 3 bills will be rolled. I will remind folks that next week we have called for the final calendar of the Insurance Subcommittee. We do have an hour and a half that we meet in this meeting. It may or may not be our final meeting. So we are going to look at our final calendar next week for Insurance Subcommittee. Thank you for all the work that you've done. We do have a calendar before us, and we will begin with item number 1 on the calendar. House Bill 2661 by Chairman Sapicki. Chairman Sapicki, you are recognized. You have a motion and a second. Please tell us what your bill does, sir.
Mr. Chairman, we're working off an amendment. The amendment number is 014488.
Yes, we do have an amendment before us. We have a motion and a second on the amendment.
It does make the bill, Mr. Chairman.
All right. As we're making the bill, we'll go ahead and put the amendment on the bill and ask you to explain the bill as amended after that. So all those in favor of adding amendment 01448 tracking code to House Bill 2661, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment is on the bill. You are recognized, Chairman Sapicki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members. Good afternoon, members. Last year, we passed historic PBM reform legislation, and one of the intents of that legislation was for pharmacies to be reimbursed no less than the actual cost of a drug or device dispensed to a person. During the summer, it came to our attention that due to a definition issue, that intent wasn't realized in the legislation. This bill today fixes that definition and assures that the pharmacies or pharmacists will be reimbursed no less than the actual cost. While working on the bill this summer, we did find multiple loopholes in the law that would have allowed PBMs to circumvent the intent of last year's legislation. This bill will also close those loopholes, like stopping PBMs from reducing a dispensing fee to offset reimbursing at actual cost for a drug or device, or a PBM from charging a pharmacy an additional amount to process a claim. This bill also requires a PBM to have a reasonable appeal procedure for any pharmacy to challenge a reimbursement amount if it is less than what the pharmacy paid to acquire the drug or the device, allows the Department of Commerce and Insurance to promulgate rules to allow for an external appeals process for any claim denied by a PBM, requires all PBMs to pay a pharmacy a dispensing fee at a rate not less than the amount paid by our current 10-care programs, and requires that all PBMs allow participants of the PBM plan to use any pharmacy within the state that is licensed to dispense the drug or device, as long as the pharmacy agrees to accept the same terms and conditions that the PBM has established for at least one of its networks. Mr. Chairman, members, that is the bill and the amendment. I'll try to answer questions.
Thank you, Chairman, and I appreciate that very much. I know this has been an ongoing effort. Chair-Lady Helton worked on this bill last year, and Speaker Sexton has a lot of interest in this legislation this year in correcting some language. Any questions or comments for the sponsor of the legislation? Representative Mitchell, you're recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Sponsor, my question is on, you said they can give no less than what 10 care. Is that by statute? What if somebody wants a dispensing fee of something less than, I think, $8?
Forgive me. You are recognized, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if I understand your question, if a pharmacy would ask for a dispensing fee that would be less than 10 care, I'm trying to figure out why they do that.
Well, a lot of PBMs, $8 on top of the cost of drugs, that's a high dispensing fee for a lot of self-funded plans.
Yes, sir.
And I just know from doing self-funded plans, that's just another line item in the cost. And $8, that's a significant number a lot of times. So I'm just wondering if by law they unless it's it's agreed upon by contract or something, because I think you're costing a lot of self-funded plans a lot of money.
Chairman Spicker, you recognized.
I understand your concern there. The potential is there. I agree with you. There's nothing in the bill that requires those payments to be made and not the cost absorbed by the PBM. They could do that. They don't have to pass that cost on. But in the bill, it does state we already pay pharmacies across the state 10 care rates, and on some things, 10 care rates is more money. And this is a business that these pharmacists and pharmacies are entering into. The name of the game is to stay in business so you can serve the people of Tennessee and provide more opportunities for them to have access to their pharmaceuticals and their devices.
Any further questions or comments of the sponsor? Seeing none, are you ready to vote? All those in favor of sending House Bill 2661 to full Insurance Committee, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any of those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Your bill moves forward, Chairman. All right. We will now move to item number 4 on our calendar. Is House Bill 0677 by Vice Chairman Hall. Vice Chairman Hall, you have a motion and a second. You are recognized on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 677 was basically rolled from last year. This bill met some resistance for the simple fact that it had a physical note. We have eliminated the physical note. Historically, when a patient is diagnosed with a disease, they're required to go through a regimen and a protocol of drugs that may be substandard, that may or may not be effective. It's often referred to as failed first. House Bill 677 eliminates that and changes all of that. It puts the patient in the best chance of success, and it eliminates the substandard drugs and goes to the most effective treatment. And of course, the first rule of medicine is to do no harm, and delayed treatment is harm. And this makes the most effective and most efficient treatment between both the patient and the physician. It's my belief that no bill on the Hill this year will benefit more Tennesseans than House Bill 677. If you live long enough, hey, you will need this bill. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I renew my motion.
Thank you, Chairman. We are going to be looking at Amendment Tracking Code 013781 on this legislation. Is that correct, Chairman Hall?
That is correct.
That is correct.
Thank you.
All right. And we'll put the amendment on and allow us to go through conversation, allow you to explain the amendment to us as well. All those in favor of placing Amendment Code 013781 on the House Bill 677, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any of those opposed, please say no. Your amendment goes on. If you could please share with us how you're looking at how the amendment is looking to remove the fiscal note and the impact of the amendment on the legislation, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my understanding we're eliminating TennCare, and just through cost avoidance, I think would be a cost savings. And I also want to reinforce the fact that this has already been approved in 25 other states, and since you're avoiding a protocol of substandard drugs, it eliminates the cost also.
Chairman Sapicki, did you have a question? Okay. I think we do have some folks that may want to testify, but we'll. You sure? Okay. We do have a couple folks, Chairman Hall, who would like to present testimony in the legislation. On the list, I have Kristen Hatcher, who is someone who certainly we would welcome to speak. Additionally, we have Dr. George Woodbury, who would like to speak. And without objection from members of the committee, we will go out of session. And Ms. Hatcher, if you could tell us who you are and who you're with. And you've got 3 minutes. We're going to start a timer, so 3 minutes. You're limited to 3 minutes in your initial conversation, but we'll engage you in conversation, and that can keep us here for a little while longer if need be. So, Ms. Hatcher, you are recognized.
Thank you. My name is Kristen Hatcher. I'm originally from Elizabethton, Tennessee. This is my first time here, so I apologize if I seem nervous. I'm a rare disease patient. It's terminal. It's called alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. It affects my lungs. It's genetic. It's nothing I did. It just was passed down to me. And there's a really great treatment. And my doctor knows the treatment. And every time I change insurance, I have to go to a different one.
Forgive me, Ms. Hatcher. You're doing great. You may want to get closer to the mic. Is that light on?
Is the red light?
Yes. We just want to make sure that we hear everything that you say, so you may want to get a little closer to that
sorry.
mic.
I speak softly.
You are fine. All right. You're recognized.
Okay. I'm from Elizabethton, and I do have a terminal genetic illness. It's called alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. It's rare. Only 1 in 3,500 people have it. And most people in my family don't make it until about 60 years old. The sad part about it is our lives are dramatically shortened because although there is a great treatment, every time you change insurances, you have to go back and try treatment that not only doesn't help, but it hurts. And every single time we end up back in the hospital. Our quality of life isn't there. And quite frankly, the medical bills, once we get out of the hospital, really are astronomical. And we have to go right back to the medication that the doctor intended for me to be on in the first place. So eliminating or at least helping with step therapy would be a godsend to so many people that just really, truly struggle to live. I'm a teacher, or I was a teacher. I can't teach anymore. I can't be in my classroom. But I would really appreciate the chance to get effective medications that allow me to live longer. and have a better quality of life without having to fight. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Ms. Hatcher? Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, and appreciate you being here, and your nervousness is not coming through. In fact, I think we're probably more nervous up here. So, but can you just explain? And I appreciate everything your testimony here, but you go through remission or you're controlled, and then when insurance changes or something like that, then you have to go through different steps to get back potentially on the medicine that's got you controlled. And during that time, you may go out of remission or you may have an exacerbation of that. And that not just for the disease that you have, but it could be for Crohn's disease or any other disease like that. Can you just kind of explain a little bit of that?
Ms. Hatcher, you're recognized.
Thank you. You hit the nail on the head every single time. They know exactly what medication I need to be on, but my doctor will say, all right, like, we're going to have to start with this one again because this is what insurance dictates. And my father, who is no longer with us, it was every month, and you might as well just call and make an appointment at the ICU, is what we decided. An exacerbation was coming.
So when you have that, it's a trip to the ER, potentially a trip to hospitalization. I've got severe asthma, and I know what works for me. And, being taken off certain medicines throughout my lifetime, I know what would end me up in the hospital. And so, I empathize with what you're with and appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Any questions, comments for the testimony? I will tell you, Elizabeth and I drive about the same distance you drive to come down here from Greenville, so I know how long it took you to get here. So thank you very much for being here. What is the drug that helps you best and helps your family members the best? And just to give me an idea, what medicine do you start with, and what do you end up with to treat your particular malady?
You start with Zumera, and it's. I wish I could tell you what it was, but I don't really know much about that medicine, but you end up on Prolastin. And Prolastin's the medication that really helps, and it's proven it's effective. My doctor actually moved here to Nashville to be closer to my doctor for that reason, because she fights for me. It's really hard to find a doctor that can really fight with the insurance companies to make you live long enough to reap the benefits. I'd love to get back in the classroom with my children one day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hatcher. Seeing no further questions or comments, I appreciate that.
Thanks, y'all.
Dr. Woodbury, are you in the... All right, Dr. Woodbury, if you could please just make sure the light's on in front of you there and stay as close as you can to the mic. If you could, introduce yourself to us, tell you who you are and who you're with, and we've got 3 minutes.
My name is Dr. George Woodbury. I'm a board-certified dermatologist with a company called Rheumatology and Dermatology. My wife is an arthritis doctor or a rheumatologist. I'm a dermatologist. I take care of skin, hair, and nails issues. We also have a pediatric rheumatologist in our practice, and we do fully understand that in this modern era with escalating costs for pharmaceuticals, there needs to be some reason, and sometimes it's important to try one medication first before another medication. So as a practicing dermatologist, I'm not opposed to the idea of step therapy. However, I know the patient better than maybe the insurance company knows the patient, and I may know, as an example, maybe a patient that comes and sees me with severe psoriasis that's ruining his life. I know that maybe he's had an issue with alcohol in the past, and he's maybe reformed himself, but he's still got this awful, awful skin condition, and I know that he would benefit from injectable Enbrel or Humira. However, step therapy protocols call for 6 months of methotrexate, which is a tablet. I know as the doctor that 6 months, if he's forced to go on that first, could be fatal. So I can't put him on 6 months of methotrexate, but the step therapy protocol that's been written up says he must take that first before he can get to the medication he needs. So this House Bill 677 actually establishes that there will be a clear, easily accessible, and convenient process for applying for an exception to usual step therapy protocols. And I think this would really make good sense. We deal with this as practicing physicians on a daily basis with these patients, all the way from pediatricians that are trying to figure out asthma medications, to internists, to rheumatologists, to dermatologists. This is really, for me to do my job as a physician, I need to be able to access therapy. And if I know the patient's allergic to a certain drug, I need to have an exception loop. So that's basically what this bill does. And I would just say we appreciate your considering this important legislation.
Thank you. Hang on just a second, Doc. Any questions or comments? Start with Representative Thompson and then Representative Smith after that. Representative Thompson, you're recognized.
Okay, Dr. Woodbury, is there any way you can give an estimate of what percentage of cases that you feel need an exception to the step therapy?
An exception to step therapy. I deal with this, I don't know, almost on a daily basis with the patients that I see. I work 5 days a week in Cordova, so I don't know, maybe it's 5%, 10% of patients that come in, but those cases are really important cases. You know, psoriasis can ruin your life, and if you can't get to therapy that's going to work for you. So I deal with this every day, but it's not every patient.
Okay, so the vast majority of the cases, step therapy in and of itself
generally is something that does help contain cost, and I'm not opposed to having step therapy, but give us a clear, easily accessible, and convenient exception loop to allow us to not have to go through a step that didn't work for the same patient, you know, with a previous insurer, or which is toxic for this patient, or maybe the patient's known to be allergic to this therapy. Give us, as the providers, nurse practitioners or physicians, the opportunity to get into an exception loop. That's what we're asking for.
Okay. One more quick one. Also, what and again, I'm going to ask you to give an estimated percentage, but percentage of patients that come to your office that you treat that do not have any kind of group insurance?
Oh, it's probably not any type of group insurance in my own practice. It's probably 1 out of 4, maybe 1 out of 5 patients that come in and just are paying out of pocket.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Smith, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. And just so that the folks can understand, step therapy, when you're dealing with antibiotics like amoxicillin versus Augmentin or some other powerful medication, that makes sense because that fits along with the standard practices of medicine. But as it relates to patients who have arthritis or who have a debilitating disease dealing with their immunology, that like the patient that you have, kind of paint the picture, if you wouldn't mind, just as testimony into the record, that like for methotrexate, you mentioned that specifically, that side effect profile can actually be very dangerous for certain patients. It's a drug that's probably 30 plus years of age, and it's not as safe a drug as some of the more modern drugs. If you wouldn't mind kind of speaking to the record that, you know, while step therapy can be very appropriate for ibuprofen, for other modalities, but when you're treating someone with a chronic disease, if you wouldn't mind kind of paint us a little bit of a clinical picture so that people understand we're not just fighting with insurance companies for the sake of fighting with insurance companies. This has a clinical outcome. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This is quite true. This 677 will hopefully save expense for insurance companies because the doctor or nurse practitioner may know already that it's going to waste 6 months of expense putting this person on a drug that we know is not going to work for this patient. So I would say that this actually is a helpful piece of legislation because it enables us more specifically in a tailored fashion, working with a certain patient or group of patients, we're able to say we can see in more detail what we think will be helpful and maybe less toxic. And quite frankly, as a physician, I don't know what the law would be. I would have to simply decline to treat this patient completely. If I knew methotrexate could be fatal, I couldn't prescribe it. Even if the step therapy said you must prescribe it first, I'd have to say, Mrs. Smith, you're going to have to find a different doctor because in Tennessee, I don't have an exception loop. It's not built into our state law that I can apply for an exception, and I'm not going to prescribe methotrexate because it could kill you.
Thank you. Dr. Kumar, you're recognized.
Thank you, Dr. Woodbury. We feel for you in the sense that you're treating a patient and you are dealing with them every day in your practice, and you realize what the best thing for them is, and you're having to fight for it. It can be very time-consuming. At this time, tell me, what is the appeals process? Supposing you have a patient who on step therapy is going to get, level 1 drug or step 1 drug, and you think they're better off at step 2. What is the process that you follow at this time? How do you appeal that?
At the moment, for instance, with step therapy, I would have to tell the patient, your insurance company's protocol says you must go on drug A. If you want your insurance to pay for drug B, which I think will be more effective for you, unfortunately, you will have to pay out of pocket for it because that's a requirement of your insurance. And some of these patients cannot afford $10,000 or $20,000 a year for these arthritis treatments. So the patient may go untreated, and it can result in permanent loss of function, and they can be crippled if it's a child.
That is your communication with the patient. What I meant to say was, would you, do you in your practice pick up the phone and call the insurance company, because they do have an appeals process usually, don't they?
We very frequently do so, but we have encountered instances where the insurance company says, we're sorry. You must go on, for instance, as an example, if a child has juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, you must go on methotrexate. And then the dad changes insurance, and then the new insurance says, even though we know the child didn't respond to 6 months of methotrexate, that child, for her juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, must go on 6 months of methotrexate. There is no other option. So it is a real significant issue. I'm not saying that always happens. Sometimes we can appeal. Our nurse in our office actually does appeal to the insurance company to reevaluate a situation, but we need a clear, readily accessible mechanism built in for an exception loop. That's what we need, because we don't have time to spend 2 hours trying to make phone calls and phone calls and phone calls. We have too many patients. We're trying to provide services.
Sure, certainly that's why we're here, and that's why Representative Hall has brought this legislation to try to help smooth the process and provide you, as you say, a good exception route. Certainly we are sympathetic to that, but I wanted to make sure and clarify the fact that insurance companies do have an appeals process. Then if you appeal them, a lot of times certain boxes have to be checked, and if it does not fit their protocol, then it may be that you have to do that. I apologize, Mr. Chairman, but I think it's very important that we clarify that we don't scare other people. We are running methotrexate down. I know patients who are taking this drug. I don't want them to get alarmed that this is a dangerous drug and so on. I've known people take it for a long time for rheumatoid arthritis and other conditions and so on. So we really need to be careful that we don't
I would
leave that impression.
Clarify that I prescribe methotrexate all the time for my patients. However, if I know that it could be toxic for a given patient, I must be very cautious.
Yeah, certainly. I just wanted to not have somebody watching the tape be concerned about it. And again, thank you. And as I said, that's what we are here for, and we are sympathetic to the idea. But again, wanted to clarify the appeals process does exist. It does not completely eliminate or smooth the process. Hopefully this bill will do that for you, but ultimately it's going to still depend on following certain rules and guidelines and walking through the hoops, so to speak. And thank you for doing that for your patients. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments for the presenter? Seeing none, thank you very much,
Thank you.
Dr. Woodbury. All right. Seeing no further presenters or questions or comments for them, we are back in session without objection. All right. Chairman Hall, if you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just close with this. 30 years from now, we need to look back and know we did it the right way. And if you believe in cost avoidance, and if you believe in aggressive treatment for diseases, and if you want to change people's lives in a positive direction, I respectfully ask for the endorsement from this committee.
Thank you. Representative Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chairman, I just wanted to go on the record to say this General Assembly has worked hard to treat patients rather than insurance plans, and this is just yet another step in that direction. So thank you for bringing the bill.
Representative Mitchell, you're recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Sponsor, I am totally for your legislation. I'm glad you were able to get the fiscal note off of it, but I'm voting for this, but the way we're having to get the fiscal note off of it just hurts me, and it just is another reason on top of another reason why we need to expand Medicaid in this state and give everyone the access to this life-saving treatment.
Thank you, Representative Mitchell. You just had to go there, didn't you? Representative Thompson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to reflect his comments. That's not what I wanted to ask about. With this bill, and I know we need to correct the defects of the step therapy program. But there's going to be a cost, and the cost passed on to people who have group insurance programs, and that's the majority of us. Is there some estimate as to the amount or estimated amount that individuals would have to pay for their insurance as a result of this?
Chairman Hall, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 677 has the potential of saving everybody's life in this room. I don't have a dollar amount. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Chairman Subcommittee, you're recognized. We do have one more commenter on the. We do have a withdrawal. Chairman Kumar, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chairman Speaker, for allowing me to vent a bit. Again, life is a balance, and certainly this balances the patient's needs with the expense. Step therapy is, of course, one way to try to keep expenses in control, but where does that value of the dollar go if it interferes with somebody's quality of life and the people we are trying to serve? And I think that's what your bill does, and thank you for doing that. I admire your persistence with it. I do have to sympathize, and I do have a feeling in my heart that we are, by removing the fiscal note, which needed to be done, we are creating two classes of patients: to those to whom step therapy will still apply, and for others for whom they will be a more easier route and for whom it will not apply. And I think we have to recognize that, and that is, again, based on balancing things in life and balancing the expense to society. But leaving TennCare out, we are excluding some people from the same privileges. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar. And the practicality of it, the heartstrings that are pulled are definitely definitely there as we listen to the legislation. I do share some of the concerns that Dr. Kumar shares. And we do still have although a much smaller fiscal note, there is still a minimal fiscal note that we'll have to work through, and if it makes it to Chairman Hicks' committee, we've given him more work to do. But this is certainly something that does pull our heartstrings. I do have similar concerns, and I've expressed this to other supporters of the legislation, that we are not creating a blanket coverage for the whole state of Tennessee. That does worry me, that we are creating patients that will have this opportunity and patients that will not have this opportunity. So that is certainly frustrating. Yes, sir. Any more questions or comments? Representative Thompson, you're recognized.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up because I'm not the, it made me sort of sound like a cruel, heartless person, but no, I am just concerned that, and I'm satisfied that this would not make people's premiums go out the roof, but we have hundreds of thousands of people in this state with no health coverage at all, and that's a dangerous proposition right there, and I am concerned about that. And this is, in this case, no, this is a good bill, and I don't think it's going to cause that much grief for any interest out here. Thank you.
Are you ready to vote? All those in favor of sending House Bill 677 to full insurance committee, please signify by saying aye. Any of those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Hall, your bill moves forward. Thank you very much, and thank you to all the presenters. We are now moving forward to item number 6 on our calendar. Leader Beck, you are recognized. You have a motion. You have a second on your bill. Leader Beck, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a amendment that makes the bill drafting code.
We have amendment drafting code 014215. Does this amendment make the bill, sir?
It does.
All right. I'll entertain a motion on the amendment. So moved and seconded. All those in favor of adding amendment code 014215 to House Bill 1941, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Your amendment goes on. You're recognized, Leader Beck.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, this is another one of my gig economy legislative agendas. What has become apparent is that when you press that app to summon a ride share, whether Lyft or Uber, in the wisdom of our legislature, before I got here, the legislature said that there has to be $1 million liability policy in place. So if that driver for Uber, while there is someone in the car, hits someone and that passenger is injured, that injury is covered up to $1 million by the rideshare company. What was left out of that legislation was that the uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage would equal or mirror the liability insurance coverage of $1 million. So what some of the rideshare companies have done is they're only covering you for the state minimum, which is $25,050 on uninsured or underinsured motorists. My position is that when I press that app and I get into that car, that I'm contracted to be taken care of, just like we did with the $1 million liability insurance policy. This bill would do exactly that, require the companies that when you're in that car, that you're covered not only for liability, but under or uninsured motorists. If you'll notice on your personal policies, your underinsured motorist usually mirrors image your liability limits. And that's all this bill is asking for. Because I've had several people say, well, your personal policy covers you also while you're in that vehicle for underinsured motorists. Yes, that's true, but a lot of the younger people don't have auto insurance because they don't own an auto. I know that's foreign to most of us, but it's true. They either walk, bike, or Uber or Lyft, rideshare anywhere that they go. They don't have automobile insurance. So if they are hit by a drunk or a uninsured motorist, all that the company's liable for is $25,000 for injury, and that injury could be a concussion, that injury could be death, that injury could be anything, and all I'm asking is that we raise the uninsured motorist coverage to equal the liability insurance. And with that, I'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Representative Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. I know that in rideshare, we've almost forgotten that there was this thing called a taxi or a cab. What do people that operate taxis or cabs, do they carry the same type of policies that you're referencing, or is there parity within that world? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Leader Beck.
The $1 million ride share code that I'm referencing in this bill was strictly created for the ride share companies when they came in. Chairman Smith, I'm not sure on taxis. I'm not sure if that's left, because if you have local taxi boards, I'm not sure if that's not left up to the locals to require how much insurance. I apologize, but I don't know the answer to your question. I don't know if legal does or not.
Representative Smith.
And I guess the thing that I hear what you're saying, and the one thing that I'm concerned about is we're asking someone to assume the liability of someone who's underinsured in case they hit you, and I'm having a hard time. That's like, sorry, but my colleague sitting here, I don't want to have to insure myself against the fact that he may not be adequately insured. So I'm trying to follow this, because $1 million policy is big, and so I just want to understand a little more and to make sure that we're not requiring rideshare to do more than a taxi cab, number one, but also it sounds like that we're asking a small business person to insure against actions of someone else that they can't control. And I just want to make sure that there's not an unintended consequence of this, and maybe I'm just the lost ball in high weeds.
And Chairman, or Leader Beck, as you address that too, I think there is concern that we're potentially looking at the ride share having to do more than what the normal insurance policy or more traditional insurance policy might be as well, which could be capped at $300,000 even for a fairly substantial policy. So I'll let you address Representative Smith and my questions combined there, sir. You're recognized.
Well, personally, I have $1 million, and I would recommend that you do too, because you have assets, and medical costs, et cetera, have risen so much that the minimum that we have in this state is $25,000. And if you get right now on your policy, I'll bet that you have uninsured or underinsured motorists, where you're buying insurance out there for all the crazy people that don't have insurance on their vehicles. And that's how you are protected. We are saying, like an innkeeper has a higher level of responsibility for the people that stay at their inn, then when you contract, you're paying for that Uber or that Lyft, which are not small companies. I would take issue with you there that they're small businesses. They're both on the New York Stock Exchange and very, very large businesses, and do a great service. I'm just saying that they need to be protected. Just like when we, as a legislature, before I came, said that coming into this state to do business, you're going to have $1 million policy. And that's not per person, that's cumulative. So if you got 5, I'm not sure how many people they allow in a car, but say there's 4 people, that's just insuring 4 people $250,000 a piece. for whatever could happen. And yes, that's the purpose of uninsured motorists, is to buy insurance for all those idiots out there who don't have insurance. That's for your safety and mine when we're on the roads. And I know it's very rarely used, but it's there when you need it. And any of our insurance friends can tell you how important that is.
Chairman Sapicki, you're recognized.
Thank you. So the question I'm going to ask you is a serious question, okay?
Okay.
So is this going to apply on Broadway to the pedal wagons, to the tractors hauling people around, providing this transportation around Broadway? Are they all going to have to secure these policies also?
This statute is only for ride-share companies that came in, Uber and Lyft. This particular statute does not reach those pedal taverns, et cetera. I know that the locals require them to have a percentage of insurance. I don't know what it is, and I apologize for that. I probably should have studied up on that, and I will before full. But this particular statute was specifically made for the rideshare companies that started business in this state about 10 years ago.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments? Leader Beck, I can be a blunt instrument sometime and help me understand this a little better. We're talking about the passenger in the vehicle having to carry $1 million, or who is carrying this insurance? Walk me through that one more time, please, sir. Leader Beck, you're recognized.
Just like the requirement that this legislature placed on the companies doing business, Uber and Lyft and any other ride share that opens up, that they carry $1 million. They're responsible for the $1 million liability insurance that clicks on as soon as you click on that app and get in that car. The uninsured motorist is carried by Uber and Lyft for the person who sits in that car. And it's not uninsured motorist until that passenger that is paying for that Uber or Lyft gets in that vehicle.
Is there a time that clock turns on? Talking about the taxis, and we've done some research, and we have not found the information that as we thought was going to be readily available on livery services as well, taxis. Is there an on-again, off-again switch for the driver when they're at one point they're driving, they have to have insurance. At one point they're not driving, they don't have to have insurance. If you could walk me through that, Leader Beck, you're recognized.
The company supplies the insurance. The company, as soon as the driver goes on that app looking to pick up passenger A or passenger B, then that $1 million liability insurance comes into play. The uninsured motorist comes into play when that passenger A or B gets in that vehicle until the point when they exit the vehicle.
They can have you. Any questions or comments, committee members? I see some odd faces on some committee members, which mine probably includes that. Representative Smith?
I still got to go back to the taxis. So does this apply to taxis, or is it just rideshare?
You recognize Leader Beck?
This statute that this is under only applies to rideshare. It was specifically crafted before I came into the legislature when these companies came to Tennessee and said, we want to do business in your state. And they're not regulated by the taxi boards. There's no regulation besides this on the ride shares.
Mr. Chairman, if I could follow up.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. And again, not to badger you about the head, but if he's a blunt object, I'm a rock today or a flat surface. So I'm trying to, because I don't want to put a burden on one transportation modality that doesn't exist on another. And so if the taxis are not carrying the $1 million policy, if whether they're regulated by a board or not, I just think that there needs to be parity. That we don't want to put one burden on a group of drivers that doesn't exist on another. And so if we know that from code, I mean, I'm just trying to make sure that we're not disincentivizing the innovation of rideshare. And again, I'm not accusing you of trying to protect taxis, but I just want to make sure that somehow we go onto the record to understand if taxi drivers have a policy like this, then let's talk about it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Leader Beck, you're recognized.
To answer your question, I think I know the theory behind it, and the theory is regulation. Taxi cabs have to meet certain requirements for their taxi boards locally in order to get that medallion to drive a taxi. Other than this requirement, there's no other requirements. There's nothing else in our statute about ride share. So that's the reason the ride share is different than the taxis. Now, I will promise you this. Number one, that I'll look into the law and the coverage on taxis between now and full. And number two, if there is a discrepancy, I'll bring a bill next. I can't bring one this session because I don't have another open code, but I'll bring one next session to establish parity, because it's very important that people who are paying for a service are protected. Just like when you pay for your hotel room, there's a higher level of security and what you expect from your innkeeper.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Chairman Sapicki.
I guess I'm kind of struggling with this. I'm willing to move this forward to full, hoping you'll gather the information we need to be able to answer all these questions, and then reserve my right in full committee on whether I'm going to support this or not. Thank you.
It's fair.
All right. Seeing that, are you ready to vote? All those in favor of sending House Bill 1941 to full insurance committee, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any of those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it, Leader Beck. It moves forward, and obviously got some work to do in full committee. So
I will. I'll have a report for everyone. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and committee.
Thank you. We are now, and forgive me, Representative Alexander has billed the last bill. It was on the addendum, and she's had to go to State Government Committee to present a couple of bills. So we are going to take up Chairman Kumar's bill next. And if we need to stay here for a few minutes after Chairman Kumar's bill is completed, we will wait for Representative Alexander to come back into committee because we do have a bill that was placed on the addendum for a specific reason. So we are now on item number 7 on our calendar is House Bill 2855. Chairman Kumar, you are recognized. We have a motion and a second on the bill. We do... Chairman Kumar, if you want to describe the situation, we do have an amendment that has been untimely filed, but an amendment that will make the bill, and kind of give us an idea where we are, Chairman, and then we'll have to take a couple of potentially take a few procedural votes here in a few moments. So, Dr. Kumar, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee. Amendment number is 14116, and it was late by about 1 hour to our office. And since it makes the bill, I request that the committee kindly go ahead and adopt it, and I would appreciate it.
Thank you, Chairman Kumar. And I'm going to say this with a smile on my face. Some folks don't know how to take my humor sometimes, but you do know where your office is to file the amendment, don't you, Chairman Kumar? So.
It is just an extreme degree of honesty on the part of our staff.
We have a motion to consider the amendment. Tracking code is 014116. We have a second on that as well. All those in favor of consideration of amendment 014116, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any of those opposed? The ayes have it. We are now in a posture where we can consider the amendment. And since it will make the bill, pause just a second, pardon me. All right, as explained to me, since this will help the posture of the legislation, Chairman Kumar, the next motion I'll accept will be to adopt the amendment that we've discussed, 014116. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of adoption of amendment number 1, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is on the bill. Chairman Kumar, you are recognized on the legislation as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee, for the indulgence. House Bill 2855 applies the prudent layperson standard to an emergency condition. The situation being that if a patient has a severe pain, they think it's a heart attack, they go to the emergency room. The bill says that coverage for that judgment by the prudent layperson that they have an emergency, the coverage will be provided regardless of the fact whether on evaluation in the emergency room the condition turns out to be non-emergent, and whether there is prior authorization required, and whether there is a lack of contractual agreement that the place of service is out of network. Regardless of these three conditions, considering that the patient had an honest judgment that they had an emergency, that will be honored and insurance coverage will be provided. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments for the sponsor? I do think we've got a situation where Representative Smith had worked on some similar legislation to this, and I believe it's passed on the House floor. So we've got a similar situation. Don't think that these will be in conflict, and potentially they could mesh with each other fairly well as we go forward. So I have called your name, Representative Smith, so you're recognized.
And I want to acknowledge Chairman Kumar. He had been working on this bill, I think, last year. The intent of the piece of legislation that we passed on the House floor and will be moving in the Senate was to expand and make site neutral the definition of emergency services so that you're in an urgent care center or at a freestanding emergency department. What this simply does is it establishes that the practice that has been adopted by some insurance companies to pay for the end diagnosis rather than the treatment pathway that you assume could be the worst in emergency care would be reimbursed. So I think that these do absolutely work in tandem, and I'll be wholeheartedly supporting it. Thank you, Dr. Kumar. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments for the sponsor of the legislation? All right, are you ready to vote? All right, all those in favor of sending House Bill 2855 to full insurance committee as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any of those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Your bill moves forward. Thank you, Dr. Kumar. Representative Alexander, thank you so much. And I've explained to the committee that that you've had to be two places at once, and I know exactly how that feels. If you're prepared, if you'd like to take a deep breath or two, we are ready to recognize you on House Bill 2544. We have a motion on the bill, and actually we do have an amendment that will make the bill, and I will give you that drafting code. The drafting code is 014197. Is that accurate?
That is correct, Chairman.
We have a motion and a second on the amendment. All those in favor of adoption of Amendment 014197, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any of those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Representative Alexander, if you could please describe your legislation now as amended.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Committee. And thank you also, Chairman, for all the many texts you allowed me to send your way a few minutes ago. This bill is very near and dear to my heart. It's concerning breast cancer. The original law was passed in 1989, and it was last updated in 1992. The bill will update the statute to better reflect all of the technology that has occurred in the last few years that utilizes for breast imaging and cancer screenings today. With passage of this bill, patients will have access to all low-dose mammography services, including breast tomosynthesis, and if you don't want to say that word, you just say 3D imaging, digital mammography, X-ray. The bill also includes coverage of supplemental and diagnostic screenings utilizing MRI and ultrasounds when necessary. For women with a personal family history like myself, my grandmother had breast cancer, my aunt had breast cancer, my first cousin had breast cancer, and other high-risk factors such as dense breast tissue, which is what I had. I cannot tell you from a personal level what I went through for the last 32 years of my life. Mammograms, sometimes 4 and 5 in a day. Ultrasounds, needle biopsies, everything you could possibly imagine, until the radiologist looked at me and said, "We can no longer tell whether you have breast cancer or you don't." I had to make the hard decision of having a double mastectomy, and it was a tough one. But when I came to Vanderbilt and the breast doctor re-looked at what they had from Johnson City, the doctor said, "I need to do my own MRI." She did her MRI, and she came back and she said, "The MRI suggests you need 12 biopsies in one breast." After I had that done, it was shown signs that I had atypical cells in both breasts. And so they therefore said, "You need a double mastectomy." It is not a matter of if you're going to get cancer, it's a matter of when. I have 2 girls I wanted to see marry. And so I had to make that hard decision. Technology has changed so much just in the past 2 years. We have a machine in Johnson City, Tennessee, that is catching breast cancer right now at stage 1, not stage 4. It is able, because it's a robot, and it is able to detect cancer at the back of the bones, where you can't see that in a mammogram. So I bring you this bill because this will allow coverage for those women who have dense breasts like myself to get additional screenings and have their insurance pay part of it. I'm not asking for parity here. I'm just asking for insurance to cover these tests that are life-saving. It is a matter of whether you want your wife to be buried or you want her to have a lumpectomy. That's where it is. That's all.
Thank you, Representative Alexander. Representative Smith, you're recognized.
And I had my yearly mammogram in December, and I paid extra for the technology to perform the dense breast examination because our insurance doesn't cover it. So it is important. I applaud you. I pray for you. You're a tough cookie. You're going to lead the way. This is going to be a terrific bill. Thank you for your leadership. We're going to stand with you. And again, this body, I'll say it, so the last committee, I'll say it in this one, we want to treat patients in this General Assembly and not insurance plans. So thank you for your bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Dr. Kumar, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Representative, for bringing this. I And thank you for opening your heart. Personally, those things are really important. Breast cancer is common, affects 1 in 8 women, and really these are the efforts that we make to change society, and the society that elected us and sent us here, and we came to serve them. And thank you for doing that. As a point, I would like to mention that about 2 years ago, we did pass special legislation with support from American Tennessee Radiology Society and others about the care so that all options are available to those with dense breasts. And it was very, very important, and I know people personally in my community that benefited from it. Thank you for doing it, and that's what we came here for, and I think it helps a lot of women. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I did fail to say, and you reminded me of it, Dr. Kumar, was that TRA is fully supportive of this bill. TMA is fully supportive of this bill. So I forgot to mention those things.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Representative Alexander, thank you very much. It's never easy to share all the information that you've just shared with us, so thank you very much. Are you ready to vote? All those in favor of sending House Bill 2544 as amended to full Insurance Committee, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Your bill moves forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your diligent work today. Chairman Dr. Kumar, I think we've given us a lot of work in full committee, as we've heard from others, that we've passed a few bills that will still take some time and energy to work on in full committee, and I know you welcome that challenge, Chairman Dr. Kumar. Any other business to come before the subcommittee? Seeing none, we are adjourned.